A lot of stories about the supporters for Karen Read outside of the courthouse. Well, for the very first time, protesters who think Karen Read is guilty showed up today. As WBZ's Penny Commit shows us, the small group is facing off against the dozens of Read supporters.
The feeling of disappointment left hanging in the air after news spread of a potentially hung jury in the Karen Read murder trial. Her supporters left questioning why a unanimous not guilty verdict hasn't been reached by now.
She'll have to live the rest of her life, always with the possibility of retrying this whole thing. This whole thing never even should have, they never even should have gone to trial. What? This whole thing never even should have, they never even should have gone to trial.
Oh my God!
And just about an hour after the judge sent the jury back for more deliberations, something happened that we've never seen before in this trial. A group of counter-protesters showed up who believe that Karen Read is guilty.
A murder trial is not a recreational event!
The five-person group stormed through a crowd of pink, claiming to know John O'Keefe's family, but wouldn't say to what extent. They accused Karen Read supporters of treating a murder trial like a party and making up lies about the O'Keefe family.
Maybe, just maybe, we should let the family grieve in peace.
The anti-Karen Read protesters told me they were mobilized after an incident yesterday when Dedham police say several Free Karen Read supporters showed up to the O'Keefe family's private gathering spot and tried to enter. They left without incident.
It is absurd, it is disgusting, and it needs to stop.
But now both sides are left waiting, each hopeful for a drastically different outcome. And you can say with confidence you think Karen Read killed John O'Keefe.
She admitted it.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. How is everybody? I missed you all. I've been doing my civic duty, and I will be this week too. So I'll be gone for a little bit, guys, a minute. But I really wanted to talk to you about the Karen Read trial and will we ever get a verdict? It seems like this case, at least at this point, may be doomed for a hung verdict. And I want to thank the people that showed up in support of John O'Keefe, the women, and face the crowd of Free Karen Readers in person. It couldn't have been a fun task to do, but I'm glad that John O'Keefe's family is getting some support, because it's certainly not getting the support in our news media. The reporting on this case has been truly horrific, the worst. And even when they refer to Karen Read as guilty people, they call them Karen Read's foes. We're not her foes. We just happen to think she's guilty. It's not a personal thing with us. We just looked at the evidence presented and made what I would call a rational decision based on the evidence. We didn't go off into conspiracy land. John O'Keefe's DNA in the taillight housing. Oh, he must have just used her taillight housing as a pillow. Karen Read's telling 10 different people, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Could I have hit him? He's dead. He got hit by a plow. Karen Read visiting the scene. no dog DNA, no the slim chance in HE double hockey sticks that a group of police officers would beat John O'Keefe up and just leave him in their front yard. You would think they would be a little bit better at crime, no? And there's no motivation. The only one who had any motivation, any animus towards John O'Keefe is Karen Read. So it's really interesting that we're getting a hung jury in this case. And what we know is that there was a free Karen Read person who got on the jury and bragged about getting on the jury and was overheard at a bar bragging, and she got dismissed. So is there another free Karen Reader? What are they hung up on? Is there no free Karen Read people on there? All I can say is things get very weird when we have these very high profile innocence fraud campaigns going on and our media hops on to it because they want the clicks and views. And John O'Keefe's family has been treated terribly, but has no sympathy from the majority of our media. So let's take a look at how they were treated in court this week. Pretty awful.
Nearly 7 hours of deliberations today and not one peep from this jury. No questions to the judge, no sign that they're any closer to deciding Karen Read's fate. Feeling great, attorney Alan Jackson said as he led Karen Read's defense team out of the courthouse and across a sealed-off street, following a third straight day with no verdict.
I actually drove in this morning holding on to my rosary beads, praying to God to help that this verdict comes in.
Read left the courthouse for several hours. She hugged and posed for pictures with a boy who told her he has a similar medical condition as hers and that he deals with a bully.
You're stronger than he is. You've been through more.
You're stronger than he is? You've been through more? I mean, why is she being treated like a celebrity? She's an accused murderer. And this is something that happens with Adnan Syed, Amanda Knox, even people, even killers in prison like Rodney Reed, Julius Jones. Our media loves to treat these people like they're celebrities. She's a defendant in a murder trial, and not to mention a horrific crime. And all it's about is Karen Read, and I'm praying for her, and meeting with children. This is the second child that she's done photo ops with. And we know how she treated John O'Keefe's children. I never wanted children. Someone else has to help out. Never talked to them again. Never comforted them. Never talked to any of the O'Keefe family again after this. And for all those who were following the Dan Markel case, we talk about Wendy Adelson never talking to the Markel family after Dan Markel's murder. Why is that so sus, and why is this not sus? Why isn't this behavior incredibly suspect? And if you even mentioned that she failed to take off her shoes because she knew that that rule didn't matter anymore because she knew John O'Keefe was dead, people will jump all over you and say, oh, you're going just on the shoes? No, we're not. We're going on the totality of the evidence. But that is an interesting detail. It's a telling detail. And there's a lot of them in this case.
it'll just prepare you for other things in life.
I'm nervous for Karen, but I've also been praying, and I'm hopeful that God is going to see the light.
John O'Keefe's brother Paul and other O'Keefe family members are also waiting at the courthouse. They have not publicly spoken since the start of the trial. At the end of this third day of deliberations, the judge thanked the jury.
Appreciate everything you're doing.
Former Massachusetts Attorney General Martha Coakley is not surprised deliberations have lasted this long, but says drawn-out deliberations do tend to favor certain outcomes.
I think the longer it goes on, it would favor either a guilty verdict or a hung jury, which in a case like this might mean they just can't agree.
So that's an interesting take. Certainly all the people that ran to my channel to say, oh, she'll be acquitted in 5 minutes have been wrong. And like I've always said, it's a fool's game predicting a jury. You don't know. And like I've said many, many times before, these high profile campaigns, the cameras in the court, just the innocence fraud talking points, one after another for Karen Read. I think you could probably list on your hand the YouTube channels that come from this perspective. So
late today, I spoke with John O'Keefe's brother, Paul O'Keefe, and he tells me that he and his family were gathered at a nearby location here in Dedham today when, according to Paul O'Keefe, about 25 to 30 people showed up outside, many of them wearing pink, he said. And he says they started taking pictures and video of their family. He says the O'Keefe family felt harassed and intimidated. Deliberations resume tomorrow.
How is that not the lead? How are free Karen readers more important than the O'Keefe family? Why do they come before the O'Keefe family in that story? And interestingly, Alan Jackson says he's feeling great. But there's an interesting thing that he did, a little maneuver in court, and I will get to the interesting video between Alan Jackson and Karen Read in a second. But before I do, I think people didn't catch this maneuver. He was talking about the jury slips being totally unfair, and Yannetti said he'd never seen, despite practicing in Massachusetts his whole career, as far as I know, said he'd never seen jury slips like this, which I find hard to believe, but okay. He got up and he was arguing for these slips, and the judge denied this request and then admonished Karen Read for laughing. But you can see she starts laughing right away. Check this out.
What is back in session? You may be seated.
22117.
All right, so why are we out here?
Your Honor, I just saw the verdict forms, and as we discussed yesterday, the amendments that the court indicated it would make them.
Oh, no. Okay, I did not say I'd make it. I said I'd think about it. I said I was tired and I needed to think about it.
What you said before you were tired and you needed to think about it was you agreed that there needs to be not guilty options for the subordinate charges under count 2.
I said that it made sense to me, but no, I did not change it upon looking at it, because the verdict slip, this verdict slip as submitted to the jury, is exactly how it always is in Massachusetts.
I ask you a question then. I don't really care how it always is in Massachusetts. I care about whether or not it's appropriate.
It's appropriate.
Different things.
It's appropriate.
Let me make my argument, if you don't mind, Judge, why it's not appropriate. For a superior charge, they have to decide that she is not guilty of the superior charge, and that is the starting point of whether or not she is guilty or not guilty of any subordinate charge, often called a lesser included. Once they decide that she's not guilty of the superior charge, now there's two additional charges that they've been instructed they must decide whether she's guilty or not guilty of. How do they decide that she's not guilty of the first subordinate charge, involuntary manslaughter?
Okay. Anything else you want to say, Mr. Jackson?
I'd like an answer from the court. How do they decide that she's not guilty of involuntary manslaughter on that verdict?
That's their decision to make.
And how do they make it if they don't have an option to check a box that says not guilty?
They don't check the box that says guilty, do they? And then when they go to the next block, they don't check the block that says guilty, and on the top you're left with not guilty. Okay?
So it's the absence of the check mark that the court determines is the not guilty finding by the jury.
Yes, that's what the verdict slip reads. It reads not guilty.
So there's no option. You move on. If it's a not guilty vote, you move on to the next charge. Alan Jackson finds this outrageous. But there's a reason why he's doing this, and so stay tuned.
If they don't check block 2, 3, or 4, the verdict slip reads not guilty. Okay? That's how it is, Mr. Jackson.
Well, and apparently that's how it's going to be because of the court's order. That is not how it should be, and it's over our strong objection. They need to see that there is a not guilty option for the subordinate charges. If they come back guilty on, for instance, involuntary manslaughter, that's immediately appealable. They didn't have an option on the verdict form to find her not guilty. It's almost like the court is directing a verdict of the subordinate charges.
Okay. I disagree with you. Mr. Yannetti, you've seen verdict slips exactly like this. Okay?
I actually haven't really.
Have you had
Yeah, right, Yannetti.
no lesser included?
No, we've always had lesser included, but I have not seen a verdict slip there where not guilty is not an option for the lesser.
Okay. I disagree with you. All right. Excuse me. This is funny, Ms. Reed. All right. We're done.
Right. So Karen Reed laughing while her devoted attorneys, Alan Jackson, is making this plea. Why was he making this plea? Thank you, Claire and Rooney. Heisenberg says, somebody in the Free Karen Reed group said Karen should do the right thing and tell the truth. Why continue living a lie? Only brings more guilt. Well, she did pretty much fess up to it right afterwards, and then she didn't want to face the consequences and came up with this conspiracy and witness harassment campaign. So why was Alan Jackson doing so focused on these jury slips? Well, Philip Dubé, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, says the Massachusetts model jury instructions and verdict slips were drafted by a committee of Superior Court judges. They omitted the option for not guilty on lesser included offenses on the verdict slip by design and not to be spurious. There have been cases where defendants are charged with multiple offenses and the jury did not reach a verdict on the superior count and instead skipped over to the lessers. If the jury finds a defendant not guilty of a lesser charge, it operates as implied acquittal of the superior count. If Karen Reed's jury deadlocks on the murder charge and skips over to move on to deliberations over the lesser charges, the lesser included charges and returns a not guilty on involuntary manslaughter without first answering the verdict for murder, she would be acquitted of murder by operation on Massachusetts law of lesser included offenses. Even though the jury may be deadlocked on that count, she would walk on both charges. To avoid such inconsistent and unintended outcome, the Norfolk Superior Court omitted a not guilty option on the verdict slips for the lesser included offenses. Alan Jackson's motion to add the not guilty language was brilliant and should be a wake-up call to the Massachusetts bench and bar. So that pretty interesting stuff. Sneaky, right? Like when is there a day when Alan Jackson isn't doing some of these, or Yannetti doing these kind of really sleazy moves? And I just wanted to show you, Alan Jackson got caught in embracing Karen Reed. It looked like a romantic embrace, and the Free Karen Readers went crazy. Let me show it to you real quick, saying it was faked until one of them had to admit it was real. It's certainly, I understand that we are in the day. So here we go. Okay, and then that became a picture also that went around. And I know that Kate from Masshole Troll Mafia said that she has reported this to the California bar. It would be interesting if they do anything. I mean, this is a improper relationship with your client is really, I think, one of the lesser offenses that this this legal team has done, when you consider that they have leaked information to Turtle Boy, Aidan Carney, and then used Aidan Carney's blogs in their own motions. I think that's much more disturbing. Their campaign of witness harassment is that they orchestrated looks much more concerning to me, is much more concerning than this improper relationship. But it's all part of a legal team that is very comfortable outside the confines of the rules of their profession. So what do we think about this? About this jury? If she is found not guilty, it would be very surprising after this long a deliberation. If she's found, I think it's more likely right now that they're going to hang, and I would think that the Commonwealth would retry her unless she's going to go and try to make some kind of deal. But I can't see Karen Reed doing that. I see her only being emboldened by this. Heisenberg says, I believe he meant sometime after the verdict for her to tell the truth. Oh, okay. Also, Karen not taking off her footwear was the biggest clue. The biggest clue of all. Interesting. P. Tim says, I guess AJ is working pro bono, right? Or pro boner, I've heard, right? That same kind of thing. Yeah. They're both getting paid handsomely. This is not a cheap defense. And certainly all the cameras and the attention are very good for Alan Jackson and David Yanetti's careers. People remember who have committed a crime, remember or think they're dealing with better lawyers that are in the news. But like I said, John Lewin said that he feels that these really famous media savvy lawyers are very easy to beat. That was his opinion of going up against some of them. Let's just listen to one other opinion on this. On what this means. And I thought this was interesting, what this means that we haven't had a verdict after 4 days. This is NBC 10.
Expected twist in the controversial Karen Reed trial, as the jury said they couldn't reach a verdict earlier this afternoon. At least not just yet, as the judge ordered them keep deliberating. Good to have you along tonight. I'm Dan Janik. Patricia's off. So the big question is, what's next? Tonight, Team's Leanna Falk is live in studio after speaking with our legal analyst. Leanna?
Yeah, Dan, this jury has been considering the fate of Karen Read for over the course of several hours and 4 days. The fact they have not yet come to a conclusion suggests the controversy outside the courthouse is being felt inside as well.
The Commonwealth versus Karen Read.
The fourth day of...
Yeah, bingo. Bingo, meaning the innocence fraud campaign has come into the courtroom and come into the courtroom, right onto the jury's laps. Funny how that happened. And the point of the campaign, this innocence fraud campaign, was so that it would never go to trial, and that they would poison the jury pool. That may have happened here, or they would make it so unpopular and make these people afraid for their lives that they voted guilty. And when I say afraid for their lives, I mean afraid for their normal lives continuing, because there's been massive witness harassment in this campaign and it's still ongoing. And Turtle Boy's Aidan Carney's trial is coming up in the beginning of July. I think it's the 11th.
Of jury deliberations in the Karen Read murder trial began at the Dedham Superior Courthouse.
I hate him! I hate him!
As a growing number of fans and foes wait for the fateful decision.
I could not sit there and let an innocent woman be framed.
No, not a red flag for narcissism. I couldn't sit there. I couldn't, as she looks over her subjects. Right? Because I'm so great. I couldn't stand an innocent woman being framed. Where's the evidence of that happening? Where's the evidence? Nowhere. I love how these free Karen Read people just say it as if it's true. And that it's like if they talk it into existence, it will be true. She's innocent. She was framed. Really? How? Show me how it's possible, because we know from the evidence it's not possible. There was no time between the CERT team arrived while the car was on its way, if not in the Sally Port. I think it was on its way to the Sally Port. So how were they going to frame Karen Read for this? And it's just sort of a misunderstanding between 10 people that all heard she hit him, and I hit him, I hit him.
And the case climbs closer to a possible mistrial.
We have been unable to reach a unanimous verdict. Clear your heads, have lunch, and begin your deliberations again.
The judge sending the 12 jurors back to deliberate and determine whether the Mansfield woman is guilty or not guilty of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe. At this point, we have no indication from the judge on the status of those deliberations. Instead, I took my questions and concerns to NBC 10 legal analyst Mark Dana.
What's going on in that jury room right now is that there is a minority of people that were persuaded by the defense that either she was
persuaded by the defense, or persuaded by the innocence fraud campaign, or persuaded by the media that hopped onto it, or persuaded by the influencers and YouTubers covering this.
Framed, and that there was a cover-up.
Dana says come Monday, the judge will likely issue an Allen charge or special instructions to help the jury come to an agreement.
You're the ones that were picked. You need to go in there and come to a verdict. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't.
And if it doesn't, Dana says the judge has two options: force them back for a third time or declare a mistrial.
I would be surprised if people changed their positions and came back with guilty.
A show of strength from both sides of the courtroom, according to Dana.
Yeah, I've never seen that work. I mean, I think she probably will send them back as much as she can, but I've never seen it work in the trials I've seen it in. I've never seen a verdict come out of a jury that says they're deadlocked, but it would be nice that this would be a first for that.
You had really two very different theories on what happened here. And all the defense needs to do is get one or two people who believe that theory, and you've got a mistrial.
The jury.
But what does that mean for Karen Reed? That means she has to, if they try her again, she has to fund a defense all over again. And what it means for the Commonwealth is that the taxpayers have to fund another trial. So it's only advantageous in the fact that maybe the Commonwealth will want to offer her a deal on lesser charges since she is facing life in prison. But I'm convinced that with all the shenanigans, meaning the innocence fraud campaign, the witness harassment, that the Commonwealth would want to try her again. Kitty's 1993, so glad to see you back. I'm so glad to be back. Jury has seemed rushed all along, wanting to go home early, even after short weeks, giving up after such a short period of time during deliberations. Yeah, maybe that means that someone's really not bending, and you would think that would be someone who maybe got themselves on the jury from Free Karen Reed, or maybe it's someone who sees this as a second-degree murder charge and everyone else wants the lesser manslaughter charge. I have no idea. We'll find out soon enough. Thanks, Genome woman. Thanks. Yeah, so it's just impossible to know. But before I go, there's one talking point that is going around. Hold on one second. Let me find it. There's been a leaked, hold on, let me show you guys this stuff beforehand, and then I'll go to the talking point. Hold on one second. Please hold. Okay, so this was interesting. Even Free Karen Reed people admit that Karen Reed texted Yannetti, "I didn't think I hit him that hard." Proctor saw the inadmissible text message. That's why he noted his superior about attorney-client privilege conversations in the phone, explains why he doesn't like her, right? So let's take a listen.
No, she texted Yannetti and said, I think she said, I didn't think I hit him that hard.
I didn't think I hit him that hard. That is inadmissible, but why do you think Michael Proctor didn't like her so much? Because he saw that inadmissible text message.
She did it. He knows she did it.
Oh, they know she did it.
No, she texted Yannetti and said,
Okay, pretty interesting. That was a interesting admission. And you can also see it in Karen Reed's text message to Turtle Boy. She said, I thought maybe I clipped him, in those that have leaked out. But there is a kind of talking point that's going around that you see in a lot of innocence fraud campaigns. And I want to address it because I've just seen this talking point so much. And this is, well, sorry. I thought it would open up if I hit on it, but I know where it is. Hold on one second. My apologies. These are all the things that I've bookmarked. Here it is. There we go. So, see, this is where you're all wrong. It is about all of our rights as citizens. The Constitution of the United States is about when there is complete power, there is corruption. So this is a really interesting point because our legal system is adversarial, meaning the defendant has a right to a vigorous defense, and the prosecution represents the victim and the people. So it works in, there isn't total power held in our justice system. The prosecution doesn't have total power. And what this movement has done, the wrongful conviction movement and basically the pro-criminal movement has done, thanks to Soros and DA George Gascon, is they thought up this like really sinister plan to run former defense attorneys as district attorney so that there is no longer any opposition. Everybody there is playing for team defense. So the DA is DA in name only, is really just another arm of the defense. We've seen that with Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore, Alvin Bragg in New York City, George Gascon in Los Angeles. And so it's getting more and more warped and becoming so that the people and the victim have no voice in some of these criminal courts. So it's this idea that anybody could be prosecuted and convicted for a crime, but what's more likely is that you'd be a victim to a crime. And yet what this innocence fraud movement has done so well is to make through our media and through these lying lawyers, made the criminal look like an every woman. So I think Martin Prybe said it best. He said they turned the criminals into folk heroes and criminalized, and they turned the cops into criminals and the criminals into folk heroes. So pretty scary stuff that we're dealing with. And to say that you could be fans of Karen Read, you're fans of an accused murderer? Really? Really? And we have a whole history. I mean, it's looking more and more like Chicago, the movie Chicago every day. Heisenberg says the final chapter will be Karen versus Turtle Boy in the same courtroom. It's all pointing to that conclusion, in my opinion. Yeah, she seems to have really left him in the dust. Lazy Susan says, hope my weird Snugglegate post helped. Thank you. Thanks, Susan Hicks, for becoming a member. Debbie Soares, nice to see you. Thanks for becoming a member. And Elaine, one of the few channels that has the voice of reason. Thank you. Thank you, Elaine. But that's really what I have for today, as there's not been much movement. You guys have, if you have questions, I guess I can answer them. But I'm just watching it from afar, praying every day that we get a verdict. Laura Graham, thanks for all you do, Roberta. So nice to have an honest channel. You're welcome, Laura, and thank you. But that's really what I have. I'm watching like everybody else. I'm discouraged that we had such a long trial and no verdict. It seems very anticlimactic and frustrating. And I'll be putting up my streams in the morning and checking in as I do my civic jury duty. And as soon as we have a verdict, or if we have a verdict, I'll be back here either way to chat with you all about it. But really pay close attention to the way the media is reporting on this trial and the language that they're using, because so much of the story is in the language that they're using and who they're making to be heroes and celebrities, and really the way they're ghosting the victim's family is something. And this is not, I wish I could say this was a one-off in the innocence fraud cases I've covered, but it's certainly Certainly nothing new for me. So have a great night, everybody. Thanks for listening. And I will see you back here again really soon.